Welcome to Empowered to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Al-Basha. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Empowered to Grow in Business podcast. This is your host, Hanan Al-Basha. As always, I get very excited at the beginning of every podcast episode because the topics are just so intriguing for me, and I can't wait to have the conversations with my guests. Today, I think you've already seen it in the headlines, but we're talking about the entrepreneurial mindset. And for those who know me or have been following me for a while, mindset is a big block for me. And it has been a foundational block ever since I understood more of it and understood how to harness it to serve me and everyone that I'm able to serve. And without further ado, we have two experts who are literally on the same mission. Today, I'm very excited to be having the conversation with Khadija Usman and Shamim Chowdhury, both of them experts in the field. Welcome. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, Dr. Hanan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you,
same,
Khadija.
likewise. It's great to be in the same conversation, same dialogue as Dr. Hanan and Khadija Usman. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I know I've connected with both of you individually, but when I thought of the topic, I'm like, I'm going to bring a lot of worlds together now. Khadija is based in Pakistan. Shamim, you're based in Abu Dhabi. I'm based in Qatar. And I know where all three of us have intersected on the same path. But before we start, because I'm very eager to have this conversation, I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves first. Khadija, would you go first, please? Let people know who you are and what you do.
So thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Hanan. So I'm basically an ICF certified coach. I run a coaching academy where we run accredited courses, again, by the ICF, and extended DIS trainings. Also, we act as coach connectors, connecting coaches to opportunities and corporate clients. So in a nutshell, this is what we do, but we are a community of really purpose-driven coaches. That's what we bring to the table.
It's amazing. Thank you, Khadija. Shamim?
So yes, I've been a first-time entrepreneur for the last 4 years now. I think being the converted entrepreneur is somewhat of the best and most challenging journey I've had. It's realizing that you have to restart from scratch. And as part of that, we're focusing on entrepreneurial growth. We're focusing on entrepreneurial mindset. And I'm super happy to talk about the science approach, focusing on data-driven insights to help entrepreneurs see what they can't see. And so, yeah, over to you.
And that's the rise of Let's Rise. Well, let's start there, actually, because I know some people, when they hear mindset, they immediately think we're going into the woo of science, and there's nothing to prove that and everything else. And I know we want to talk today about perseverance and persistence and resilience and everything else that comes along with it. But Shamim, start us off with the science. Let's talk about mindset from the scientific approach. What is it actually, or how can we define it?
So first and foremost, let's start from the basics. The basic principle is, why do entrepreneurs fail in their business ventures? And if you do enough research online, you'll see that they'll talk about every reason that is considered external to the person, external to the entrepreneur. So it's always about running out of cash. It's always about, the team dynamics didn't quite work. It's always about the pivot that's gone bad. But in reality, it's all about decision-making. And it's decision-making in every aspect of the business, personally and through the business as well. And what we've been focusing on are what are the essential traits that are involved in entrepreneurship, and what are the optional traits based on the industry that you're going into, based on whether you're a solo founder or a co-founder, or whether you're focusing on technology or something that's purely community based, right? And so by thinking about all of this, we thought about 15 entrepreneurial traits that we think are essential for all forms of entrepreneurship. It doesn't, like I said, it could be a personal brand, right? Or it could be building the next, best tech startup. So
yeah. So okay, so go ahead, continue that part.
And to take it further, right? We talk about this main topic of like resilience. That's one of them, of course, but resilience works in certain conditions, right? So to really understand what's so important about resilience, we have to understand those conditions where it doesn't quite work well for you, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a formula, right? There is other attributes at play, not only just you, but also your co-founders, right? It's also about the industry. It's also about the idea and the target audience. All of these factors play a role. And by understanding your traits, you can understand whether you are completely in line with the business venture, or whether you need to be with the right business partner, or whether you need additional talent, whether you need additional education or mentorship, guidance, whatever that is.
Yeah. And when it comes to mindset, I know my mind was blown reading Dr. Carol Dweck's kind of a book on the foundations of mindset. She's a lead researcher and expert on the topic, having researched it a lot, and talking about how mindset impacts. I like to think of it as how it impacts the way we act, react, and interact with life. And as you said, Shamim, it's literally how we show up in our business. And the kind of the three categorizations, if you'd like to think of it, as fixed versus growth mindset, positive versus negative, and abundance versus scarcity. Now, Khadija, from what Shamim said and talking about why mindset or what the internal factors could be determining why a business would succeed or not, you talk about grit a lot. And I know it's the name of your business as well. Let's talk about that in relation to the resilience that Shamim was just talking about, and why some business founders could succeed or why they wouldn't because of their mindset.
So a great question, and you shared the book that I absolutely love, and I've made it mandatory for my students to read that. So yes, I think the growth mindset and being more like taking challenges head on, that very closely ties with resilience. When you have that muscle where you don't just get bogged down, because when you start off as an entrepreneur, you will be faced by challenges by the minute, and you have to keep, it's like an internal pivot. It's not just the external venture that you're pivoting. And giving my own story and my own example, for instance, here, Dr. Hanan, if you allow me to, is when I started off, I was really fixated on bringing a certain tech product to the market. And then it took me quite a while to realize that what I wanted to sell is not what the buyer was ready for. So we have to be in tune, is what do they need, as opposed to what we are pitching. So I think this is where resilience comes in as well, because you have to be open to changing your mind. And we have this sunken cost kind of thing, where we think that we have invested so much time and effort and resources on a certain idea, and so now we have to make it work. Whereas the reality is a bit different. We have to sort of go with the like mold our own selves and what we are offering to suit the buyer and the market that we are targeting. So I think they are very closely aligned, and especially coming from professional background where they hasn't been an entrepreneur from, I think even my distant relatives don't include entrepreneurs. So it was quite a mindset shift, because when you come from a professional background, your focus is security and safety. And when you become an entrepreneur, you realize that, that's not, that you have to totally shift your ideology there, because it's not going to be paycheck to paycheck. Yes, there is the limitation, the pros and cons of each, but we have to be comfortable with that uncertainty. And I think that really aligns with resilience as well, because it can take a toll, and it can be very stressful getting used to uncertainty, because we're not wired that way. We're not built that way to take, we get stressed at the least sign of uncertainty. And when we have a lot of certainty as, entrepreneurs, especially as startup founders, it is quite a test of the nerves.
Yeah, that's true. But thinking, Shamim, historically, I mean, our way back ancestors were all about uncertainty. They didn't know if they're going to land some food today or not. And yes, their stress was justified because there were saber tooths. They were trying to, kind of eat them up. How does this uncertainty kind of fit into this equation about mindset and building resilience from the uncertainty, from the rejections, from the the unknown and everything else, to support a founder nowadays to be able to build that kind of framework or tool base?
This is a question that deserves a whole new podcast on its own.
We can do that. I don't mind. We can have serial topics.
You raised a really valid, a very valid topic. One of the things that is the biggest concern is, given how our ancestors were able to adapt and get through those challenging times, and now that we live in the age of where everything is kind of done for us, right?
Yeah.
How does that have an impact on our ability to adapt, right, to changing markets and changing conditions? The pandemic, yes, it's history now, but it did have a significant impact. And the ability to, use our resilience, to use that muscle, as Khadija quite rightly put, was so important. It was a realization for everyone that actually maybe we're not as adaptable as we think, right? Funnily enough, I started Let's Rise in the middle of the pandemic, right? Because I saw it as an opportunity for a hard reset rather than trying adapt. But going back to your question, how do we see the resilience, evolving now, focusing on now? I think the real problem is that we just don't have enough time, right? Okay. We are, as a civilization, we are distracted by everything, right? We have so much noise, we have so much bias, right, that's appearing. And in entrepreneurship, there are so many stakeholders. There are customers telling you what you should be doing. There are business partners, mentors, accelerators, incubators, investors, angel investors, you name it, right? Everyone has something to say, and it's creating that bias, it's creating that noise, and it is distracting entrepreneurs because they don't figure out how to navigate what is the reality and what is false, right? Yeah. And it's that distraction is what's preventing us from taking the time to reflect on successes and past failures, right? If we don't take the time to reflect, then it doesn't matter how good we are in, turning failures into successes. If there's no time to reflect on it, then we're just going to keep making the same mistakes in different environments.
True. I like to think of it as when you have to wait until the dust settles of the storm, and then you can see a bit clearer. I'm not saying you're seeing till the end of the road, but at least the 2 steps ahead, take those, stop for a moment and stuff. But as you said, there's the pressure of all the stakeholders. You're getting poked on a daily basis that you have to perform, and you're being questioned of, why aren't you at step T when you're at step Z, or wherever it is. There's always that questioning. But that brings me to another part. Okay, we spoke about the ancestral part. We spoke about the adaptation, the markets nowadays that are not letting you breathe. Khadija, can we say that you either have it in you or not? Because I had this conversation a number of times where people's like, I don't have it. I'm not like you. And I'm like, I don't think you either have it or you don't. If you feel like you don't, you build it. Can you build resilience and grit and perseverance?
Yes, so I would recommend them to read Mindset again, because
Yeah.
that clearly says that, you can learn anything that you want to, you can do and achieve anything that you want to. You just have to have that courage, build in that courage as well, and that's also buildable. That's also not set in stone, that I can't build that muscle. So yes, I think certainly there are people who think that they can't do, and then they are operating in that fixed thought process. And also, Dr. Hannah, it's not easy to take risks. As I said earlier, it's very
Yeah.
stressful and it's not for everybody. So it's a matter of choice. What do you choose? Do you choose comfort, or do you choose that stress or that growth? So by the end of it, it all boils down to your personal choices. Some people would think on, what legacy do we want to leave behind, and that's their driver. So what's your
Yeah.
driver as well?
Yeah.
And some people would like to be comfortable and live a life of ease, and not to say that they don't have stresses
Yeah.
at all. They have their own set of stresses, but it's the heart that you choose.
Yeah. Shamim, do you think entrepreneurship, I don't want to say mindset, entrepreneurship spirit is a choice?
100%. It's a
Okay.
choice. And going back to whether entrepreneurs, if people can be entrepreneurs or not, I think the word no is probably the worst word that was ever invented, right, in the vocabulary, because it doesn't tell us why that we can't.
Yeah.
And I think for entrepreneurship, it's either yes or a not yet, right? And it's a
I
not
love
yet
that.
because of this, right?
Yeah.
It's because
Yeah.
of you haven't experienced enough, you haven't exposed enough to the market, you haven't had enough conversations with customers, you haven't done this. All of that is what's relevant here.
And something that you said that's really, really important as well. It's not yet as well gives you the opportunity that, first of all, you can play many roles, because people think entrepreneurs and they think immediately, well, entrepreneurship, the essence of it is about innovation, is about thinking and bringing something that, new angle or new take on something that's there or something that wasn't there in the first place. But always they have to think that they have to be the CEO, the chief executive officer of the business. And that in itself, we know that is where, yeah, no, or maybe not ever. It's not like a maybe yet. It's like not yet. It's a maybe not ever. And that's okay, because entrepreneurship encompasses a lot of different roles. Shamim, I want you to respond on that, because I noticed how you know what I'm talking about. And we work with people, and then we're both in Founder Institute as well, so we get exposed to founders like in the hundreds, where we know they have an amazing idea, but they're not CEO material. But does that stop them from being founder or co-founder?
It's like as if you've been reading my LinkedIn posts.
Oh, I have. Have you spoke about that? I haven't noticed it, but sure.
There was
We're in sync. We're in sync.
Yeah. Let me take a more of a personal experience. Let me draw my own experience from this.
Yes.
And that is when I started Let's Rise, it was essentially me labeling myself as a CEO. And I haven't earned it, right? I haven't earned that title. I don't have a reputation for helping entrepreneurs at this point. We were talking about 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And my focus was about being the right CEO. And of course, what does that happen? That influences your decision making, because now you're starting to compare yourself to an Elon Musk or a Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. And when you're comparing yourselves to those CEOs, what you're doing is you're setting yourself a bar that doesn't even make sense, right? And one of the things I realized is I'm the right person for Let's Rise today. I may not be the right person in the future, right? And it's understanding that what is it about you? What is it about me that makes it enough, right? It's my passion. It's my desire to be, to understand it on a deep level about the problem we're trying to solve, right? It's about innovating a solution that works to help all stakeholders. And it's about building something. And it doesn't matter about, oh, you don't have a great network of investors, or you don't have that reputation to those experienced entrepreneurs to be able to support them. That's not what's important here, right? Because someone has to start it. And that's why I'm the right person. That's why you're the right person. And it's just, it's understanding that right now I'm a builder. Let me focus on that. My ability to become a CEO, I can still step up, right? Later on down the line. But if I'm not stepping up fast enough, then I have a choice to make, whether to, to step up my game even faster, or step down and let somebody else take the reins. It's simply, you are who you need to be right now, right? And just understanding that.
Khadija, from what Shamim was talking about now, coaching, the essence of what coaches, how they support people is to support them to see their core competences and, where they can kind of shine and the areas where they can shine. And talking about that from finding your entrepreneurial persona, but also how to find the competences within you to support your resilience and your grit and your perseverance throughout the method. Talk to us a little bit about how you can, how coaching can support you, or the support system that's needed to support you as an entrepreneur from that perspective.
So yes, Dr. Hanan, a lot of times people have a lot of blockers and limiting beliefs, and you must have heard that a lot of times, and sometimes it's heard done to death kind of a thing. Done to death kind of a thing. So actually, I loved what Shamim said earlier, and I will come back to that also. But as coaches, we can empower people, because a lot of coaches, what they want is, not everybody is working as an internal coach or looking to sort of grow in their career and become a coach. Most people want to do it as a side hustle and then eventually do it as a full-time thing, and so they are seeing themselves as entrepreneurs, whereas the mindset sometimes is not there, the skill set is not there. So we add this, like in our trainings we add this element as well. And we stress the fact that it's totally all right to not try being an entrepreneur, because it's been glamorized to some extent.
Yes, true.
And I think you've, in one of your talks, and I think at my summit, it was really wonderful. And you highlighted that point that it has been glamorized and it isn't for everybody. And if somebody wants to do like a solopreneur kind of a thing, again, what they are essentially doing is that they are service providers. And then again, they need to learn how to build their personal brands, because when you're a service provider, your own personal brand really matters, because your connection to your target audience matters. If you're building a business, as opposed to that, like if I'm building Grit, I'm going to say Grit. It's not all going to be about Khadija. It's going to be about Grit, the team, and all that team effort that goes into it, because I'm trying to build an organization, an enterprise. So that is totally different from working as a solopreneur. So there's a lot of confusion there to begin with when it comes to coaches and they setting up their businesses. Sorry, you asked about resilience.
Yes,
Right?
how coaches can support the entrepreneurs to be able to see the core competences to build their resilience and their perseverance along the journey.
Yes. So when you say core competencies, is it the ICF core competencies? Because
I'm not sure, but I think of core competences as your strengths, the areas within you that you cannot see for yourself.
Yes, sorry for that because I do that day and night. This is what I'm even dreaming of. So,
Okay.
yes, I think coaches can help people identify their strengths and realize, and because coaching is all about empowerment. We can't lead the client. Like if they believe that they can be entrepreneurs, they can be founders, they can do that, and we at a certain level might hold a bias, and or we might judge that maybe they're not that material, or maybe they might not end up doing that. So we will hinder their progress if we bring in our biases. And when I say this, I always think of my own coach, my first coach, first business coach, and I could see from her face and everything, because I'm a very unassuming and a very low profile kind of a person, and I've never identified with leadership per se, because we always equate leadership with being that bold person, the noisy person in the room, who the D style personalities according to the disc. So we always see them as those dominant people, and so I could see, and sometimes, as coaches, we have to be mindful. Are we expressing our biases in some way? Sometimes you don't have to say anything, and you still end up expressing that. And I could feel that there was a huge question mark on her face, that would she be leading? Would she be actually be doing this and all that? And there were so many probably question marks on the face, but I see that change. Like, I saw that change in my own case, and I'm sure it does in a lot of areas too, because, it's not, as you realize and you go on, you realize that it's not just these qualities, it's the consistency, it's the showing up. It's so much
Yes.
more than just being the loudest voice in the room when it comes to entrepreneurship and building something. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay, thank
yes.
you for that. Shamim, let's talk about the thriving part of our title today. Is thriving just a matter, just following up on what Khadija was saying now? Okay, we know you can do it. Is it about systems? Is it about frameworks? Is it about consistency? But you also mentioned something that's really important. Is it about realizing when you have reached the end of your core competences or your capacity to serve in a specific role? How do you see the thriving part?
So there's a very common term that's been thrown around, which is
Okay.
product market fit, right?
Yes.
And that I'm going to use a different concept. It's the point of wisdom, right?
Okay.
The point of wisdom is the moment you've understood the harsh realities of the market, right? Who are the individuals or the stakeholders or the companies that are blocking you, and which ones are supporting you? It's understanding who are the payers and who are the impactors, right? It's understanding all of these stakeholders and realizing what are people willing to admit to that they need, and what are they willing to pay for. When you've reached that point, that is product market fit, right?
Yes.
Because
You're
that's
the
when
product.
exactly. Right?
Yes.
If technically, if you're a coach, then yes, you are the product, right?
Yeah.
But if you're building a product, obviously you being the product are translating that product into something
Yeah.
that's more technological, that's willing to be able to scale. And I think to get to that point, it's all about having that deep understanding of the problem. It's never losing sight of it, and not getting distracted. That's one thing. The
Yeah.
second is staying 100% committed, right? How many
Yeah.
entrepreneurs do we know that have a side hustle here and there and everywhere, because they see it as an opportunity to make money, which is fine, but it's also doing a disservice to all the companies that you're working on, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not able to commit wholly onto that one point, right? That one issue, that one problem that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's
Do you
all about commitment. And yeah.
Do you think that point of wisdom that you spoke about, that is kind of where the graph then starts going from wobbly to now we look at the thriving part, whatever the parameters for thriving are?
Exactly. If you have enough money, then you're going to start to thrive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you run out of cash flow, right? And that point of wisdom, obviously, it happens. It's different for every entrepreneur. It's different for every industry, for every problem that you're trying to solve. But on average, it takes 3 years to reach that point.
Yeah.
So it's a question of, do you have what it takes to last that long?
Yeah.
Do you have the resources? Do you have the financial capital to be able to do that? That is the question.
And I love that you brought that up, because I get a lot of, oh, so, we're hitting break-even point within the first 6 months. I'm like, hell no, you're not going to do that. That doesn't happen that way, because if you do, then you need to reinvest in the business to make sure now you're growing it a little bit. But from that perspective, Khadija, I'll go to you, and from the concept of grit. So Shamim was talking about the financial resource. I believe as humans, and especially as entrepreneurs, we have to look at all the other pools of resources that we've got, because sometimes, of course, the financials are very constrained if they're there at all. We have our time, we have our energy, we have our knowledge, and we have any other tangible or intangible assets at our disposal. Do you believe that we can reach the point of thriving if financial resource is not there, by employing our grit and our perseverance and our resilience?
Yes, I think we can, but then the resources, if you don't have the financial resources, then perhaps you have that art of bringing in people, or you need to have some element there which is going to sustain you. Like it can't be that you have zero funds in your bank account and there's nothing to sustain you or pay your daily bills and all that, and you keep going with your business. No, that's not possible. Yes, you can, like in my instance, like um, I don't know if everybody is familiar with my story, but like trying to build a tech product where I did not have a tech background. So I got scammed in the process, and I was left without any funds.
Yeah.
So there was a time when literally I did have zero in my bank account,
Yeah.
and I challenged myself that I have to go out and work for somebody else. I have to do the same amount of hustle, and then I have to make a sale for myself. So who would I choose? Do I choose to go out and do that for somebody else? So I thought of it long term, and this is what kept me going. Like that this is what uh, sort of helped me build that muscle, that telling myself that I have to do it. There is no other choice. So when you're really limited with choices, somebody wrote the other day, and I really loved it, that behind every successful person there is a need to be successful as well. So so if you have all the resources set and you're in your comfort zone, sometimes you're not as pushed. But when you are in dire straits, that is your driver at times, because
Yeah.
you have to do that. So I think yes, you can. If you have that drive, if you have that push, you can make things work with very few resources as well.
Mhm.
There is a huge thing, like at least in our part of the world, in Pakistan, till a couple of years back, they were very big on getting the funding, and it was very glamorized, and everybody would be creating pitch decks and everything. um, but the focus was not on the business model and sustainability. They just thought that we have this fancy idea and we have these people who can invest. Whereas if you try focusing on building a strong business model, something which sustains itself, eventually you don't even want a foreign or something investor in it. Why should you? Like if you're sustainable yourself, you don't
Yeah.
need that. unless you want you have certain plans for exponential growth, then of course it's understandable. But otherwise, I think you can create something sustainable if your focus is sustainability. If your focus is just to be a salaried employee in your own in your own venture that you probably, so it's your baby, but it's not going to remain your baby if you give it to other people. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying, and I don't have a restrictive approach in that sense. I'm a person who believes in keeping the options open as well. As I shared, that that can come in if it's needed, if you plan for exponential growth and people's values change over time. But I think we should go in with a completely open mind. When you're venturing, it shouldn't be like that I have to stay as somebody who self-sustains, or I have to go for funding. I think the core focus should be strengthening your core business and your business model, because that's how you will survive the few percentage of startups that do survive. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're just going to die, like most of them eventually do, because that grit
The
is missing.
statistics are not in the favor of the startup founders, unfortunately, especially within the first 5 years. But Shamim, what's your kind of roadmap for building the resilience and moving towards the thriving, whether it's your personal roadmap or from the Let's Rise perspective?
Whew. On the one hand, I think the trying to solve is not necessarily building resilience in entrepreneurs. It is about accelerating success, right?
Okay.
When we're accelerating success, what we're trying to say is that point of wisdom that takes 3 years, how do we get that to a shortened time between 3 years, or 1 year or less, right? How do we bring that down? And for us, it's all about accelerated learning, right? Learning from the failures of others and being able to articulate those failures in such a way that really nails down to the reason why it failed, right? And understanding what was required to grow. And I believe that as a group of entrepreneurs, as that entrepreneurial spirit, as a cumulative effort, it does require a community, right? Effort. It does require everyone to be sharing those stories for us to learn. And I think, I mentioned this at the beginning, there are certain conditions where resilience does not work, right?
Yeah.
Because there are some times where, resilience, where we say, yes, I'm going to bounce back from this failure. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Sometimes we don't know when to stop, right?
Yeah.
And that is the danger. So for us, we're trying to make a change and say, instead of being resilient, how can we be, and I'm going to use this word out here, it's called openly resilient, right? And that is the ability to fail, share the story, learn from it, and basically create ideas for growth, right?
Yeah.
So that's where my focus is on, is
I love that.
not so much resilience being the key, but as a key input for learning and growth.
I love that, because the first resilience, the way you're framing it as well, it's where I'm resilient, I'm getting, knocked down and stuff, and I'm just going to do it. It's kind of synonymous with stubborn, just being stubborn without learning. But now when you're openly resilient, because I think I am, that's now more about, it is about more adaptation and more learning and more growth, which goes back to the mindsets we were talking about, the frameworks of mindset. It's more about being both employing a growth mindset that's both positive and is looking at the abundance in the learnings, not in the failures, but in the learnings, to be able to apply them differently. So I think I just took your words and kind of fed them in a little more. But I love that. Thank you both so much. I know that I think both of you know me differently, and you know that I could talk about this for a few hours because there's so many learnings. And as you said, both of you, it's not necessarily about what's within you. We also have to be very in tune with the circumstances, the external circumstances, the market circumstances, the shifts in dynamics, the funding landscape, and the force majeures like the COVID and the wars and the political situations and all of this. And sometimes there is so much uphill fighting that you can do, or resistance or perseverance, but sometimes it's just you have to go down that hill and up another one just to be able to keep going. And that in itself is hopefully how you become thriving in creating your own venture, even if that means you are not in the role of the leader of the business. So Shamim, I totally relate to that, and I totally definitely a believer in that as well. I have to ask you both my last question, as always, at the end of the podcast. So the podcast name is Empowered to Grow in Business, or just Empowered to Grow. And I would love to know how this phrase resonates with you personally. Khadija, how does Empowered to Grow resonate with you?
So to me, they're synonymous, empowered to grow. We were talking about resilience, and I'd like to add something there as well. That there's this concept called post-traumatic growth. We all go through challenges and difficult times, but just survive, going through that and continuing with life as you were before is survival to me. But building that muscle and coming out stronger is thriving. And this is what empowered means for me as well. Being that person who learns from whatever challenges they've been through or struggles they've been through. And this is what empowerment is all about, and resilience is all about. And
Thank you, Khadija.
growth is all about. So thank you so
I
much
like
for this
that.
opportunity.
Thank you. Shamim, how does Empowered to Grow resonate with you?
For me, it feels like a cycle of transformation. So if you think about an individual and their current mindset is either I don't need to change, I don't need to grow, or is some on the other extreme, which is I'm growing and I'm inspiring others to grow, right? So, or empowering others to grow. Let's use your words.
Yes.
And it's, for me, it's that the people on the extreme of not wanting to change or not wanting to grow, education is not going to help them, right?
That's true.
No matter how much education you give them, it's not going to help them. But what will help them is the stories of those that are growing and being inspired by them. And that, to me, that's why I feel like it's more of a cycle of transformation. It's like you reach the top of growth, the epitome of growth, and that inspires others to do the same thing. So
that's true. I love that. And by the way, initially the slogan for Empowered to Grow was Empowered You Empowers Others. And that is just in resin. I forgot all about it. I haven't been using it, but maybe I should start using it again. Just because, as you said, I think it's not about the education. It's not about what people tell you. It's not about the environment you're in. It's about what you believe is possible. And you only believe what's possible by seeing what others are able to do. And you realizing that you've got that within you, and we've got that within your ecosystem, whatever that ecosystem is, to be able to support you and to find, whether Khadija, yourself in your network, Shamim and Let's Rise, and every other network we're in, it's to find, I call it your tribe, the people who have they're on the same mission, the same kind of audacious visions, and have the tools and resources to be able to support one another along that mission. Thank you both for everything that you are doing and for empowering others to grow. I know that's part of your mission, and that's why I believe we've connected so much. Thank you. It has been awesome. And I can't wait for future conversations with you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanan.
you
It was
very much.
lovely.
Thank you. And for everyone who's watched this today, I do hope you are empowered to grow and believing that when you are empowered, you can empower others, not necessarily by doing it yourself or telling them yourself, just by being yourself and realizing the potential within you as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a business leader, whatever your role is. Just believe that your resilience, your ability to show up during adversity is what others need to see that is possible for themselves. So until then, and until next week when I see you, I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.